Welcome to This Explainer. I'm so glad you're here today because we're going to dive right in and demystify the incredible science behind the nutrients that literally sustain our global food supply. Get this, roughly half of the entire global population is fed by crops grown with mineral fertilizers. Without our modern understanding of plant nutrition, feeding billions of people on Earth just wouldn't be possible. I mean, we hear the word fertilizer all the time, right? Walking down the hardware store aisle or reading the back of a bag of potting soil. But the actual biological and chemical mastery required to keep our global soils thriving, it's absolutely fascinating. Let's get into it.
So, it all really starts with one simple foundational question. What actually feeds the crops that feed us? Think about it for a second. Just like you and I need a balanced diet, carbs, proteins, vitamins, to function at our best, a plant needs a highly specific, balanced diet to survive, grow, and ultimately end up on our dinner plates. They don't just eat dirt, not at all. They rely on their root systems to pull up this incredibly complex cocktail of minerals and elements hidden right there in the soil ecosystem. And if even one crucial piece of that diet is missing, the whole plant suffers.
Here's a quick look at our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the plant's balanced diet. Second, the types of fertilizers. Third, we'll look at the 4 R's of application. And finally, sustainable soil and farming.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the plant's balanced diet and understanding essential nutrients. Before we talk about what plants eat, we really need to get our baseline vocabulary straight. A lot of folks tend to mix up soil fertility and soil productivity, but they're actually very different things in agricultural science. Fertility is the soil's inherent natural bank account of nutrients. It's just what nature put there. But productivity, that's what happens when a farmer actively manages that account. You could have a soil that's incredibly fertile, like a massive bank vault stuffed with cash. But if it doesn't get enough water or air or a farmer's skilled management to actually unlock that vault, it's not going to be productive at all. So the whole goal of agriculture is maximizing productivity by intelligently managing that natural fertility. And to manage that fertility, we have to talk about the primary macronutrients, famously known as NPK. What's super cool here is how these three act like highly targeted vitamins for completely different parts of the plant's anatomy. Nitrogen, the N, is basically the engine for the leaves and stems. It's the literal reason plants get that lush, dark green color that is so essential for capturing sunlight and driving photosynthesis. Then you have phosphorus, the P. That's the architect below ground. It's totally crucial for building robust roots, and it acts like a cellular battery, moving energy around the plant. And potassium, the K, think of that as the plant's immune system and regulator. It manages water by opening and closing tiny pores on the leaves, and it actually strengthens the cell walls to fight off disease, drought, and even extreme cold.
But hey, N, P, and K definitely aren't working alone out there. Plants also crave secondary macronutrients, things like calcium, magnesium, and sulfur, along with trace micronutrients like iron, zinc, and boron. It's kind of like how we humans need tiny trace amounts of iodine or iron. Plants only need these in microscopic amounts, but they are absolutely life or death vital. For example, if a plant is short on zinc, its growth just stops. It stunts into a visible condition called rosetting. Or if it lacks sulfur, the young leaves turn a sickly, pale yellow. In ag science, this all comes back to the law of the minimum. Basically, plant growth isn't dictated by the total resources available, but by the scarcest resource. Getting a truly balanced diet means getting every single one of these elements exactly right.
Moving right along to Section 2, types of fertilizers, and how we actually supply that massive demand.
Out in the field, farmers generally lean on 2 main sources to deliver these nutrients, and comparing them really shows why we actually need both for our global food systems. First up, inorganic, or chemical fertilizers. These are highly soluble, meaning they deliver a massive, targeted, instant nutrient boost right when the crop needs it most. It's literally like a shot of espresso for the plant. Boom, instant energy. Organic manures, though, like compost or farm waste, well, they're more like a slow-burning bowl of oatmeal. They release their nutrients much, much slower as they break down over time, but they do something chemical fertilizers just can't. They actively build the physical structure of the dirt. They create little air pockets and act like a giant sponge, which vastly improves the soil's ability to hold on to water long-term.
Let's zoom in on a really specific, fascinating example of an inorganic fertilizer, ammonium sulfate. Farmers love this stuff because it's a 2-for-1 deal. It efficiently supplies both nitrogen and sulfur at the same time. And when the soil microbes start processing it, the chemical reaction actually releases hydrogen ions. That creates a unique acidifying effect that's absolutely perfect for balancing out high pH alkaline soils. But here's the catch. Storing this stuff is a total logistical nightmare because it's hygroscopic. That's just a fancy word meaning it actively sucks moisture right out of the air. If farmers don't manage their warehouse humidity perfectly, it will literally pull water out of thin air and turn into a giant, unusable, wet mess. Honestly, it's kind of like leaving a bowl of powdered sugar sitting out in a sauna.
And then we have this incredible third category that honestly gets overlooked way too often: biofertilizers. We aren't talking about synthesized chemicals or composted waste here. We are talking about living microbial sources. These little guys act as biological catalysts down in the dirt. Take rhizobium bacteria, for instance. They actually move in and live right on the plant's roots, pulling off this absolute magic trick where they grab inert nitrogen gas straight out of the atmosphere and turn it into edible plant food. Mind-blowing, right? Then you have phosphate solubilizers. Think of them as microscopic miners that unlock trapped, hardened phosphorus in the dirt. And mycorrhizal fungi? They act like living, breathing extensions of the root system, reaching deep into the soil to dramatically boost how much water the plant can absorb.
Okay, on to Section 3, the 4 R's of application, and seeing efficiency in action. Modern farming basically runs on this simple yet incredibly powerful checklist called the 4R principle. It goes like this. You need the right source of nutrients, applied at the right rate, at exactly the right time in the crop's growth cycle, and in the right place in the soil. This is way beyond just driving a tractor around and dumping a bag of powder on a field. Applying fertilizer properly is an absolute masterclass in precision physics, biology, and timing. If a farmer misses just one of those R's, like, say they get the time wrong, and put down a ton of nitrogen right before a massive rainstorm, well, those nutrients just wash away and the whole system completely falls apart.
And honestly, trying to perfect those 4 R's shows us just how high the stakes really are. Check this out. Globally, when we look at vital staple cereals like wheat and corn, the nitrogen use efficiency is alarmingly low. We're talking only about 30 to 50% is actually absorbed by the plant. That means up to 70% of the nitrogen applied is just lost to the environment. This underscores a massive, urgent economic and environmental crisis. We simply cannot afford to waste over half of the plant food we put down. When waste happens on that scale, the farmer's production costs skyrocket, which, by the way, hits your wallet at the grocery store with higher prices, and the environment pays a devastating toll.
So to fix that efficiency and stop the waste, farmers use a bunch of really diverse, specialized application methods tailored to their specific crops. Sometimes they use broadcasting, which is basically just spreading the fertilizer uniformly across the surface, usually for dense cereal crops. But if they want to be more precise, they use placement, or banding. That's where they meticulously inject the food right into the dirt, right next to the roots where it won't wash away. They can even skip the soil completely with foliar feeding, which is spraying a fine, nutrient-rich mist directly onto the plant's leaves for instant absorption. Or, for the ultimate high-tech approach, there's fertigation. That's dissolving the nutrients directly into the drip irrigation water, feeding the plants sip by sip exactly when they're thirsty.
Which brings us to our final section, number 4, sustainable soil and farming, looking at the global perspective.
Look, when we ignore nutrient use efficiency, the environmental fallout is severe. Remember that 50 to 70% of lost nitrogen we just talked about? It doesn't just safely disappear. It leaches deep down into our groundwater as nitrates, or it runs off the surface straight into our lakes and rivers. And that causes massive toxic algae blooms, a biological process called eutrophication, which totally sucks all the oxygen out of the water, suffocating fish and destroying aquatic ecosystems. And it gets worse. When soil microbes break down all that unused fertilizer anaerobically, they release nitrous oxide. That is a super potent greenhouse gas, hundreds of times more warming than carbon dioxide. So yeah, it directly drives climate change.
But there is a modern solution to this crisis, and it's called Integrated Nutrient Management, or INM. This represents a massive paradigm shift in global agriculture. We're moving away from that old, blunt, input-heavy style of farming, where we just blindly chuck synthetic chemicals at the dirt to force a yield. Instead, INM is all about smart, knowledge-intensive farming that respects the whole soil ecosystem. It's like a perfectly conducted symphony. You judiciously combine the instant, targeted power of chemical fertilizers with the long-term, structural healing of organic manures, and you fuel the whole thing with that natural, living engine of microbial biofertilizers.
When we finally start tapping into these natural nutrient loops and actually treat the soil like a living, breathing ecosystem instead of just an empty vessel, the wins are absolutely huge. First off, we drastically cut our reliance on expensive synthetic chemicals. By working in organic materials, we boost the soil's organic carbon, which physically pulls carbon out of the atmosphere, turning our farms into active weapons against climate change. We slash waterway pollution, and at the end of the day, we secure long-term, climate-resilient crop yields that can actually survive extreme weather patterns like prolonged droughts or heavy floods.
So if you take away one thing today, let it be this foundational philosophy of modern farming. Feed the soil to feed the plant. For decades, modern agriculture got so hyper-focused on force-feeding the crop directly just to get immediate yields that we completely forgot a simple, undeniable truth. A crop is really only as healthy, resilient, and productive as the living, breathing ecosystem it grows in.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge. You absolutely do not need a 1,000-acre commercial farm to put this amazing science into practice. Whether you've got a backyard veggie patch, a couple of potted tomatoes on an apartment balcony, or you volunteer at a local community garden, the fundamental laws of soil fertility are exactly the same. So I have to ask, how can you apply these sustainable nutrient loops in your own local environment? Maybe it's just starting a compost bin with your everyday kitchen waste to boost those living soil microbes. The more we understand the complex, microscopic universe beneath our feet, the better we can protect the future of our food. Thanks so much for exploring the science of agriculture with me today.